Have you ever noticed how the energy between you and a younger man shifts the moment he finds out your age? Maybe you were having a great conversation, laughter, spark, that lovely sense of being seen, and then suddenly something changes. He smiles, he's still polite, but there's a quiet step back. You can feel it. It's subtle, but it stings. And maybe you've asked yourself the same question so many women do. Was it my age? Did I say too much? Do I need to look younger? Let me tell you something right now. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not the problem. Today we're going to talk about something that women over 60 rarely get honest answers about. How to connect romantically with younger men without sacrificing your dignity, your peace, or your beautiful sense of self. We're not here to talk about tricks or gimmicks. This isn't about how to dress like a 30-year-old or memorize the latest slang. No, this is about truth, the kind that makes you powerful without trying. Because here's the truth most people won't tell you. The difference between a woman who captivates a younger man and one who gets politely dismissed has almost nothing to do with her age. It has everything to do with how she sees herself and how she responds to being seen. Let's begin with something fundamental. There's a real difference between a lover and a mother. And many women fall into the second role without even realizing it. Picture this. You're 62, confident, independent, divorced, maybe with grown children and your own rhythms in life. You meet a man in his 40s, or even his late 30s, at a dinner, a community event, or through mutual friends. You feel that spark, and he feels it too. But as the conversation deepens, something inside you starts to shift. You hear yourself saying things like, "Oh, honey, are you sure that's a good idea?" Or, "That sounds just like something my son would do." Maybe you offer him advice. You start wanting to protect him, help him, fix something. It doesn't feel like much at the time. But what's really happening is that you're stepping out of the role of partner and into the role of caretaker. Now let's flip the script. Imagine you're him. You're drawn to a mature woman, not because you want a mother figure, but because you're looking for someone who feels like a partner, who brings emotional steadiness, wisdom, and depth. Then she starts advising you on your job. She's texting constantly to check in. She worries about your dinner choices. Or she starts joking about being too old for this. Suddenly that mysterious spark you felt, it starts to fizzle. Let me tell you about Susan. She's 60, sharp as a tack with a gorgeous silver streak through her hair. She met Ethan, a man 15 years her junior, during a museum tour. They hit it off instantly. He loved her stories, her energy, her quiet confidence. But within a few weeks, she found herself offering to help him revise his resume. She offered to proofread his emails before he sent them. And every time he mentioned a problem at work, she was ready with an answer. A solution. Advice. She meant well. But slowly, Ethan began to feel more like a student than a suitor. And Susan? She didn't understand why things cooled off so quickly. She kept wondering if she needed to lose 10 pounds or dye her hair. But the truth is, it wasn't about her appearance. It was about her energy. When a woman steps into mother mode, even unconsciously, she changes the nature of the connection. And that's what so many women miss. The instinct to help, guide, and nurture is beautiful. But when it overpowers the romantic dynamic, it creates imbalance. He doesn't see a lover. He sees someone who reminds him of his mom. And unless he's looking for therapy, that won't be the foundation of desire. Now, this next part is just as important. One of the most common unconscious mistakes mature women make with younger men is how they talk or joke about their age. You might think you're being humble or funny. You weren't even born when that song came out. Or, you probably don't even know what a cassette is. But do you know what message that sends? That your age is a problem. That you feel the need to explain it, excuse it, or downplay it. What makes a woman radiant isn't her youth. It's her comfort in her own skin. Let me share something from one of my clients, Linda, a 64-year-old retired teacher. She went on a date with Ryan, a 42-year-old architect. Over coffee, he asked her age. Without hesitation, she smiled and said, 64. And I've earned every single one of these years. Then she leaned in and added, and I wouldn't trade them for anything, not even perfect knees. Ryan laughed, not out of politeness, but because her confidence was magnetic. She didn't flinch. She didn't self-deprecate. She simply owned her life. That is power. That is attraction. That is unforgettable. Here's another trap I see far too often: trying to look young in unnatural ways. Now hear me clearly. There is nothing wrong with caring about your appearance. It's beautiful to take care of yourself, to dress in a way that makes you feel good, to feel radiant in your body. But when it starts coming from a place of insecurity, a desperate attempt to keep up, it begins to backfire. Linda, the same woman I mentioned earlier, told me she once spent almost $2,000 on a set of procedures she saw in a magazine. New fillers, skin tightening, the works. She thought it would make her more appealing. Instead, when she met Ryan, he complimented her smile. But she realized he was responding to her laughter, not the money she'd spent on her jawline. The spark came from the ease she brought into the room, not her moisturizer. Younger men aren't seeking women who look 25. If that's what they wanted, they'd date someone 25. What draws them in, what holds their attention, is presence. It's that graceful confidence that can't be imitated, only earned through living. And the moment you try to become someone you're not, they feel it. The worst part? You begin to feel it too. And the beautiful, rich woman you really are starts to fade into the background, all in the name of a performance. So let's lay the foundation right here. You do not need to pretend. You do not need to chase. You do not need to shrink, to fix, or to explain. Your presence, when it's grounded in truth, is your most powerful form of attraction. And when you stop trying to be something you're not, and instead offer what no young woman can, life experience, self-awareness, and emotional steadiness, you stop being someone he politely likes and start becoming someone he deeply respects and desires. Let's keep going, because there's another unconscious pattern many women fall into without even noticing, and it's one that can silently chip away at attraction, no matter how good your connection feels at the start. We just touched on something subtle but powerful: how unconscious behaviors can shift the energy between you and a younger man, often before either of you realizes it. Now let's dig a little deeper into these patterns, because awareness changes everything. One of the most damaging and sneakiest behaviors is what I call over-accommodating. It's when you're always available. You text back immediately. You cancel your plans if he suddenly wants to see you. You say yes before he even finishes asking. And you think, well, isn't that what love looks like? Isn't that how you show you care? But let me ask you this. When everything comes too easily, how much do we really value it? Attraction thrives on a little mystery, a little tension, a little sense of discovery. When a younger man feels like your entire world rearranges around him, even if it's coming from a place of excitement, something inside him starts to shift. What he first admired in you, your independence, your rich life, your self-assurance, slowly gets replaced by something more passive, predictable, too easy. And here's the tough truth. Easy is rarely exciting. Now, I'm not saying you need to play games. That's not your style. And frankly, that's not sustainable or dignified. But I am saying that keeping your own rhythm, your own priorities, your own life, sends a message that is far more powerful than 1,000 text replies. Let me share something that happened to Carol, a 66-year-old artist who started dating Jason, a man 28 years her junior. They met through a local photography exhibit and instantly clicked over their love for nature and light. For the first few weeks, they had incredible conversations, long walks, playful dinners, shared playlists. But over time, Carol found herself shifting. She started skipping her yoga class just in case Jason called. She stopped working on her paintings because she didn't want to miss a message. She told herself she was just being open to love, but in reality she was losing the very essence of what made her so interesting in the first place. And guess what? Jason noticed the shift. He didn't know why, but the energy felt different. The dynamic wasn't balanced anymore. Carol went from being this radiant, fully alive woman to someone who revolved around him. And that's when things slowly fizzled. When she told me this story, her voice cracked a little. She said, "I thought if I just showed him how invested I was, he'd stay. But now I see, I stopped being the woman he fell for." That kind of realization can sting, but it's also freeing. Because once you see it, you can change it. You can return to yourself. That brings us to another mistake many women don't even know they're making: taking things too seriously, too soon. Now, don't get me wrong. Your depth, your emotional intelligence, your lived wisdom, these are treasures. But when every interaction becomes a heavy discussion about life, values, plans, and purpose, it leaves no space for play, for laughter, for flirtation, for that irresistible spark that only lives in the present moment. You know what many younger men find incredibly refreshing in a mature woman? Not just her insight, but her ability to laugh, to play, to dance in the moment without overthinking it. When you've lived through enough, you start to realize not everything has to be a lesson. Not every conversation needs a deeper meaning. And not every date has to lead to a definition of where this is going. When you're relaxed in your energy, when you can flirt a little, laugh easily, share a drink without analyzing every word, you become magnetic. Because you're not trying to manage the future. You're just enjoying the now. And that enjoyment, that aliveness, it's contagious. Let's go back to Linda for a moment. After her initial date with Ryan, she told me something that stuck with me. She said, "I used to think that I needed to show how mature and composed I was all the time. But when I finally let myself giggle like a girl over a silly joke he made, something shifted. I felt free, and I think he did too." What a beautiful reminder. Maturity isn't about being serious. It's about knowing when to be serious and when to let go. But now let's talk about another pattern, and this one's tricky. It's the idea that we should protect ourselves by pretending not to care. You've probably seen advice online. Don't text him back too soon. Act cool like you don't need him. Be mysterious. The problem? When it's fake, it shows. There's a difference between being independent and being emotionally unavailable. When you build a wall so tall that no one can reach you, you don't look confident, you look guarded. And guarded energy repels connection. True confidence is being able to care without losing yourself. To feel deeply, but not desperately. To say, "I enjoy being with you," without it sounding like a plea. Let me tell you about Margaret. She's 63, a retired nurse, and one of the most emotionally grounded women I've ever met. She began seeing Daniel, a 40-year-old chef, and from day one she told herself, "I won't fake indifference. I'll just be real." So when he sent her a sweet message, she smiled and responded, not in 5 hours to look cool, but when it felt natural. When he asked how she felt about their connection, she didn't say, "I don't know. We'll see." She said, "I'm enjoying this. I don't know where it'll go, but I like where we are. And you know what Daniel told her later? That honesty, it felt so rare. It made me feel safe. You see, younger men, especially ones with emotional maturity, are often worn out by shallow games. They've been ghosted. They've been confused. They've been left wondering. When they meet a woman who is real, steady, and unapologetic about her interest, it feels like a breath of fresh air. That kind of authenticity isn't weakness. It's power. So here's the golden thread running through everything we've talked about. Younger men aren't looking for a woman who acts like someone she's not. They're looking for someone who's grounded enough to be exactly who she is, without apology. When you try to prove that you're desirable, you lose the very magnetism you're trying to project. But when you own your story, your years, your laugh lines, your wisdom, when you stand in your experience with grace, you become unforgettable. And it's not because you're trying to be. It's because you've stopped trying at all. There's something liberating about realizing you don't have to chase love. You just have to stop chasing the version of yourself you think someone else wants. And when you do that, when you allow yourself to just be, something beautiful happens. The right people, including younger men, begin to see you. Not for what you're trying to be, but for who you already are. Now I want to bring up one of the most common yet misunderstood behaviors: the need to impress. And I get it. After a lifetime of building a career, raising children, navigating life's curveballs, you've earned every success. You're proud of what you've accomplished, as you should be. But when a date starts to feel more like a resume review than a connection between two souls, it creates distance. Emotional distance. Take Helen, for example. She's 65, a retired attorney who built her life from the ground up. When she started seeing Mark, a 43-year-old entrepreneur, she naturally led their early conversations with her achievements. Her firm, her financial independence, her travels. She thought this would earn his respect, and it did. But not his romantic interest. Mark later told her, "I admire everything you've done, but I didn't feel like you were letting me see who you are underneath all that." Because here's what's true. Accomplishments command respect, yes. But desire? Desire is born from connection. It lives in the soft spaces, in the way someone's eyes light up when they talk about what makes them feel alive, in the comfort of a quiet moment where no one's trying to impress, in the simple presence of someone who knows themselves and isn't performing. There's nothing more attractive than a woman who can say, "Oh, yes, I've done a lot, but I'm more than what I've done." So let's pause here and ask, how often do you lead with your spirit rather than your story? And speaking of spirit, I want to talk to you about something most women never realize they're doing. And that is draining the spark right out of the connection by becoming too serious, too soon. I see it all the time. A woman believes she needs to be the responsible one, the composed one, the one who already knows how everything will go. And she forgets that one of the most magnetic things about her, especially to a younger man, is her ability to surprise him. Younger men are often navigating a world full of pressure. They're building careers, managing families, figuring themselves out. What draws them to a mature woman isn't just her calm. It's her ability to invite joy back into their lives. Let me tell you about Carol again. After her relationship with Jason faded, she took a long look at herself. She asked, "When did I stop being playful?" It wasn't a rhetorical question. She meant it. She realized that after her divorce, she took pride in being composed, efficient, structured. But somewhere in all that, she stopped laughing. So she made a change. Not for a man, for herself. She picked up painting again. She joined a local improv group. She started saying yes to things that had nothing to do with progress and everything to do with pleasure. And guess what? That vibrant energy returned, and so did the suitors. Because here's something that gets overlooked. Sensuality is not about appearance. It's not about age. It's not about what you wear. Sensuality is about energy. It's about the way you take delight in the world, in music, in food, in laughter, in conversation. That's what lights people up around you. That's what a younger man notices. Not whether you can keep up with his Spotify playlists, but whether you can bring him into your world with warmth and wonder. And now, we arrive at one of the biggest shifts of all, the one that changes everything, not just in romance, but in how you walk through the world. It's the shift from thinking that your age is something to overcome, to understanding that your age is your superpower. So many women approach younger men with the subconscious belief that they need to compensate for being older. Maybe you've thought it yourself. I have to be more fun. I have to look younger. I have to prove I'm still desirable. But what if that belief is the very thing sabotaging the connection? Let's flip the script. What if your age is the reason he's drawn to you, not the obstacle? Think about it. You've lived. You've learned. You've lost things and found yourself again. You know who you are, what you want, and what you no longer need. You carry a calm that doesn't come from perfection, but from perspective. And that is rare. Younger women may have youth, but they're often still searching, still figuring themselves out, still trying to fit in. But you've outgrown that game. And for the right man, that's exactly what he's looking for. Now let's be honest. Not every younger man will understand this. Some are just curious. Some are not ready for depth. That's fine. They're not your people. But the ones who are tired of surface-level attraction, who crave something richer, they're out there. And they will recognize you not because you contort yourself to fit their mold, but because you don't. They'll be drawn to the way you take up space, the way you move through the world without apology, the way you know how to hold silence, the way you make them feel more like themselves just by being more of yourself. You see, the real magnetism of a woman over 60 isn't about what she's lost. It's about what she's found. And when you stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to compete with younger women and start showing up as someone who brings something entirely different, that's when everything changes. You don't need to chase anyone. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to soften your edges or cover your scars. You just need to stand in your truth and let your light be seen. And if a younger man is drawn to that light, not for what it gives him, but for how it makes him feel more alive, then maybe, just maybe, he's worth your time. So if you've been wondering whether it's possible to love someone younger without losing yourself, let me assure you, not only is it possible, it's powerful. Because when you stay rooted in who you are, when you stop asking, "Am I enough?" and start knowing, "I am exactly who I need to be," you stop attracting boys who need mothers and start attracting men who are ready for women. By now, you've probably noticed something stirring inside you. Maybe a shift, maybe just a gentle whisper that says, "I don't have to try so hard." And that whisper is right. Because the kind of attraction that lasts, the kind that builds something meaningful, never starts with pretending. It begins with presence, your full, honest, beautiful presence. And here's what younger men who truly fall in love with mature women are really looking for. Not a woman who hides her age, but a woman who owns it. Not someone trying to compete with youth, but someone offering something youth can't provide. You've got something rare. And the moment you stop apologizing for it, it begins to glow. There's a kind of freedom that comes with no longer needing to be chosen, and instead choosing yourself first. Let me tell you a story I haven't shared yet. It's about Helen, a 67-year-old woman who had spent decades living for others. Her kids, her late husband, her job. When she finally retired and moved into her own space, her first space that felt fully hers, she said something simple: "I'm ready to fall in love with my life again." That journey led her to Mark, a 38-year-old landscape photographer with a heart full of curiosity. They met by accident, bumped into each other at a bookstore. She wasn't wearing makeup. She wasn't dressed to impress. She had just come in to find a book on native wildflowers. But she was radiant. Not in the traditional way, but in the way someone is when they're completely unguarded and lit up by what they love. And Mark saw that. It wasn't her face or figure or the number of candles on her last birthday cake. It was the way she talked about her garden, the way she listened, the calm she carried, the way she looked him in the eye and didn't need anything from him, but still made him feel chosen. They began to spend time together, long drives, shared meals, quiet hikes. And one day, Mark said something that took Helen's breath away. He said, "You make me feel like I can be a better man just by being around you." Isn't that what we're all looking for at the end of the day? Not someone to complete us, not someone to fix us, but someone whose energy reminds us that we're allowed to be more of who we are. And if you've ever doubted that your age could be part of that energy, I want you to let that doubt go now. Because the truth is, the more you've lived, the more you've earned your own clarity. You don't ask the same questions anymore. You don't waste your time on things that drain you. You don't need constant reassurance. You've weathered storms and come out wiser, softer, stronger, and that is magnetic. So here's what I hope you take with you from this conversation. Not a list of tips, not a formula to follow, but a new lens. One that lets you see yourself as a woman whose value deepens with time, whose energy speaks louder than her wrinkles, whose story is not something to hide, but something to share with pride. If a younger man is drawn to that, to you, then it's not because you tricked him. It's because he saw something in you he couldn't find anywhere else. So let yourself be seen. You don't need to shrink to fit someone's comfort zone. You don't need to dim your light to seem less intimidating. You don't need to manage every interaction to keep his interest. The right man, regardless of age, will not just admire your experience, he'll lean into it. He'll want to hear your stories. He'll respect your time. He'll meet your strength with tenderness and your softness with care. And if he doesn't, he was never your match to begin with. Let that be your new standard. Not whether someone likes you, but whether they can meet you where you are and walk beside you without asking you to walk backward. And if that person happens to be younger, let it be because your connection is real, not because you had to convince anyone it was okay. Because real love, the kind that makes your heart feel awake again, has nothing to do with numbers and everything to do with energy. So if you've ever felt like you were too old to fall in love again, or like younger men couldn't possibly understand you, or like your age makes you invisible, I hope this conversation reminds you of a deeper truth. You are not invisible. You are vibrant. You are still unfolding. And your story isn't over. It's just entering a new chapter, one where you don't need to prove your worth. You just need to live it. So go ahead. Laugh louder. Say yes to the coffee date. Wear the earrings that make you feel bold. Sit across from someone younger and don't explain your age. Let your energy do the talking. And if love shows up at your doorstep, don't ask if you're too old for it. Just ask if it makes you feel more like yourself. Because that's the only kind of love worth having. If this message spoke to your heart today, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, have you ever felt that shift with a younger man? Have you ever tried to shrink yourself just to feel accepted? Or have you stepped into your own power and felt the difference? Your story matters here. And if you haven't already, please give this video a like. It helps more women like you find this message. Subscribe to Strong Elderly Life for more encouragement, truth, and inspiration. Because your best years aren't behind you. They're right here, waiting for you to live them fully. Until next time, remember, your age is not your weakness. It's your superpower. And any man lucky enough to stand beside that better be ready for the ride.